entirely possible. Don't need to leave for the honest stuff.
Sound check.
Sound check done. Okay, it's 7:30, so we're going to start. Welcome to everybody for coming. Firstly then, the apologies and reasons for absence.
No apologies.
No. Are there declarations by any members of interest pecuniary or other than pecuniary?
No.
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 I will declare an other than pecuniary, a very distant other than pecuniary, because one of our planning applications, I know the people concerned well, and I know their neighbours well. They're both here. So be aware that I am... it's not just like someone else in the village, as was put to me, it's the fact that I do know them both as friends.
I know them.
Indeed. But I'm following John's line a while ago on a similar case.
Yeah.
As I say, it's a very distant other than pecuniary, but I'm being open, which is what the Code of Conduct encourages us to do. Right, but there aren't any others. So there are no applications that have to be put under the pecuniary interests. A reminder to everyone that this meeting is being recorded with a very visible microphone. And so at this point I will adjourn the meeting for the public session. And what we usually do is we first talk about planning applications in case the people who have come for that reason alone want to go home. And so the first one that is on the list is Pond Acre, 28A Poplar Road, which is the case that I was just referring to. Does anyone want to speak on account of that application? I see you are here, Seamus. Do you want to say anything?
I just come along, I thought it was right that I come along to the meeting because
well, you're very welcome.
Application in, just to say honestly, hopefully it should be fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Okay.
Obviously it's on the website anyway for people to look at, so
Sure.
it should be fairly similar story as it is.
Indeed. John, do you want to say something?
Yes, I'll just say as a next door neighbour, I was very flattered to have a visit from him to show me exactly what he wanted to do, and we had a brief discussion, and I very much appreciated that. My other neighbour who isn't here did the same. I have a neighbour behind me, however, who doesn't seem to understand the needs of communicating, but that's not the point of this. I support this absolutely.
So you're comfortable with it, which
Yeah.
is good to know. Does anyone here want to ask any questions of Seamus or John or Diane about it? But I mean, it's been very simple. Good. Okay, I'm glad to hear all of that. Thank you very much. Now, Tile House Farm is a little bit more convoluted. There is another application in for this site, which is for a proposed single-storey detached dwelling house, aka a bungalow, with new vehicular access into the orchard part of Tile House Farm. This is the one that we've had several applications on before. We have supported a couple of them. We have objected to a couple of them, the first and the last. It's the same site again. Now, I think, I'm not sure if you sent it out, are you going to read out that correspondence?
When it comes to
To the proper meeting, you're quite right. Yes, I'm jumping ahead. Okay, we have had correspondence and we'll get to that when we're in the meeting proper, of course. I don't think there's anybody here to speak on behalf of Tile House Farm, so I was given to understand. Is that right? Does anyone else want to talk about Tile House Farm? Miriam?
Yes, I do, but I'd like to understand why we can't hear the communications that you've had ahead of us making comment, because that might affect what we have to say. What is the justification for us not being able to hear what the clerk's received?
The justification is that you're here for the council meeting, which is a council meeting. We give you the opportunity in the public session to comment on items on the agenda. We don't share papers. Those things haven't gone on the portal. They will be read out before we make any decisions. Incidentally, there's nothing very material in there other than saying, you know, we hope that you'll support it, but that will be read out.
Well, I would lodge objections then that the public haven't been able to hear.
I hear your objection,
But
Miriam.
if it goes on the planning website, then we can do it through Ashford, presumably. Well, the first thing I'd like to say is that I find the way that this application has been presented is totally deceptive. It's presented such that it's actually coming from Tile House itself. It's purporting that the land is part of the residential curtilage of Tile House. If you look at their planning statement, they've headed it as if that's their address. The developer, who I understand still owns the site, has now passed it over to what I think is sometimes termed a white knight to put the planning application in. So I'm certainly concerned about that, and I understand that as a result of that the people at Tile House weren't even consulted because it was deemed to be their planning application, which seems absolutely outrageous to me, but I think William Ashford are on the case. The application seems no different in principle to the previous application, apart from the fact that the footprint is very much larger, being a single storey dwelling as opposed to 2 stories, so they're trying to get the same amount of accommodation on a single storey. As I say, I think all the reasons for rejecting it last time, and indeed the Parish Council object the previous time to the application, I think they all stand. Nothing fundamentally has changed, apart from I think the application is now pretending to be something that it isn't. That land is certainly not the residential curtilage of Tile House, and the state of the land is very much different now from when that application was first put in. Anybody who looks at the site will see now that it's not that short mown grass, which wasn't a suitable foraging area for wildlife. Now I would imagine it's probably teeming with wildlife in there. So, as I say, we will be objecting against this application, and I hope that the Parish Council will stand by the decision on the previous application and also object.
Okay. Does anyone else want to say anything? Thank you, Miriam. Does anyone else want to say anything about the Tile House application? I see the neighbours are here, but I understand that they will probably feel the need to stay silent, but it's entirely up to you.
It was in the contract and we're not allowed.
No, I understand. I totally understand. Does anyone else want to say anything about the Tile House application?
Just very quickly, I must agree with Miriam that I was fooled by the application when I saw it on the Ashford site, and I had words with you, and thinking it was indeed a relative. But that's how it came over, and that it was being built on as a relative.
And I explained it to you.
And you did, and I understand that. But I have to say that it was a slightly sneaky. I felt fooled. I hadn't been taken that way, but that's possibly because I came from the other end, because I got the letter to explain the situation, therefore I wasn't really in a position to. And I can't therefore really judge on how much a false flag it was. I'm just making a statement.
Does anyone here want to raise any points on that, or questions of anyone else? No? So we've done with planning then, yeah? So does anybody or who next wants to raise anything else on the agenda? Roger.
Just a quick one, Mr. Chairman, if I may. I've sent an email to Yvonne about it. There has appeared a fence outside number 25 Poplar Road.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very ordinary fence. It's about 3 foot 6, 4 foot high, and it's, well, I'm disappointed in it. Can I put it like that? And then you know me a bit quite well. You know how I actually feel about it. My thoughts were that if everybody did that along there, this village would be totally transformed into something we wouldn't want to live in.
Indeed.
And it's, I asked, and I've had a reply, and Yvonne, Parish Clerk, I should say, not Parish Clerk, they said she will look into it, but does it need planning permission? Should it have it? But it's not very nice.
We're talking about the one which is part of what I always think of as Swan Cottages on the front, just by the side street.
No, you're talking about...
Opposite top of Lloyd's Green. Opposite the top of Lloyd's Green.
Yes. It's the one where there's been a lot of rubbish
It's been smartened up.
Yes, yes, they had 2 entrances, and now they've closed off one.
Suddenly this fence has appeared, I think it's sudden. I mean, I hadn't noticed it before. And I would just ask if the councillors would like to have a look at it and see what they think. I think it's
I'm still not quite sure.
So
It's the one I know about, which is
come round
that
the bend
fence.
from John Rivers' house, and it's the second house on the left.
Second
Just
or
the
third,
front
yes,
of
it's
the
the
Before
one.
the one that was up for sale for a while.
Yeah, so it's...
On the same side as
new
you.
wooden fence.
Yeah,
It's
okay.
between John Rivers' house and the meadows.
Yeah.
Halfway down the left-hand
Okay.
side. It's got a light colour because it's new.
Yes.
Feathered.
Yeah, that's the one that used to be a bit unsightly inside.
That's
That's
exactly
why you're
correct.
saying it's been tidied up by the fence. But I agree with you, I do agree with you, Roger, that fences do make the place look different.
Yeah.
There is another one further along which has had a hedge rooted out, which I was rather disappointed by. And it's had a fence this height put in, which again changes the look of the place, and the hedge has gone.
There's been no attempt to make it look nice or pretty. It's a very utilitarian fence, which you normally find in a back garden.
I hear your point.
Chairman, if that fence is in front of the house, if it's over 3 foot high, it requires planning permission.
It is.
It is.
Okay, that's useful advice. So I think that on the face of it, we can ask the clerk to talk to Ashford and see what their view is.
Perhaps measure the fence first.
No, it shouldn't be there.
No, it's more than 3 foot. Okay.
Yes, definitely.
The interesting thing is that the one I was talking about might also be above 3 foot, but it's only just above if it is, because it's about this sort of height. Okay. Who wants to raise the next point? Yes, Miriam.
Just item 6, this to decide upon the use of CCTV in the village.
Yes.
I'm sorry I missed the last meeting, so I don't know what was discussed there. And obviously the minutes haven't been issued as yet, so I really don't know where the council is on that. But I would have thought the use of CCTV is quite a major decision, and I would have thought that there should be some public consultation on that matter before the village has CCTV installed. I'm not expressing an opinion for and against, I'm just saying I think that, and I think actually it is required before you actually put CCTV up, that you do have some kind of consultation as to why you are doing it, why it is necessary. It's an invasion of people's privacy, and therefore I think there should be proper justification. So I would think that that should go out to public consultation before any decisions are made.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Thank you, Miriam.
I don't know what's happened tonight, but I'm agreeing with Miriam yet again. You know? And I would go on with that very much.
It's handy that you're sitting close together.
I was just given a project, and I want to change something in the minutes to reflect what was decided at the last meeting.
Paul, just to clarify where we are before we go on in the public session, Paul is going to talk to CCTV tonight like he did last time, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say. I think the only thing I would add at this point is that I hear what Miriam says. Any decision on where we are at the moment, I believe, is still some steps away. We're not about, I think it would be fair to say, to decide tonight that we're all going whoopee and sticking CCTV in. It is really still thinking of issues and pros and cons and options and all that stuff, and it may or may not go anywhere, but if it did, I think we've all heard the point you make, Miriam. I don't know the answer to the question you make about whether it has to have consultation. I do understand the point you make that it might be good practice at the least.
Yes, probably good practice, but certainly having looked into
well,
the use of
it's a good point to
CCTV,
raise. Thank you.
it is something that's worth considering. It's just the way the agenda item was phrased, it sounded like we might be making a decision.
I just think we need to get to the point where we know what it is we're consulting on before we consult.
Indeed.
We haven't got to that point.
We are a few steps away yet, and it may be true to say a few big steps away yet.
Okay.
Okay. And another point?
No, I've got to go.
Right, thank you, Miriam. Good night.
I was going to talk about CCTV, myself.
Other people will look forward to hearing it, and Miriam can hear it on the recording.
Lots of love.
Anyone else with issues to raise on the agenda? No? Okay. So I'll adjourn the public session if everyone's happy, and we'll move on to the... I'm sorry, you're quite right, Roger.
Yeah.
Roger knows what I have to do better than I do. We have to take Joe's report in the public session.
Oh, I thought I got away with it then. Hello everyone.
Evening.
I haven't had a huge amount of time in any of my areas the last month. As you're aware from last month, my father took ill and is still quite poorly in hospital. But the things that I have dealt with here over the last month, some of you may be aware about the rubbish in one of the gardens along Swan Cottages. I was working with the housing manager to get that dealt with, and it has been. Although I was speaking with Lee earlier, and she said that there's some in one of the neighbours' gardens now. So I've emailed the housing officer again to try and deal with that in the same way, because that worked quite well last time.
Good.
Also, Lee has told me about fly tipping issues up at the Woodland View area, where the housing manager, I think Southern Housing, doesn't seem quite so keen to deal with it as firmly as Ashford has in this area. So she's going to be meeting with the housing manager, because I think they wanted to put it onto all of the residents' service charge, which seemed unfair when it's just one family that is doing this. And I've said that I will do a joint visit with the housing manager if that's required, because it seems that they might not want to deal with it as firmly as they should.
Right.
So that's a lot of the work that I've been doing this month along with Lee. I've also reported some potholes which have been opening up with all the recent cold weather, and that's mostly all I've been up to. But if anyone's got any issues they'd like me to look into, obviously let me know, and if anyone's got any questions, please ask as well.
Right. Does anyone have any questions for Joe? Okay, thank you for that. It does just occur to me about this fly tipping at Southern Housing, that depending on the circumstances of exactly where the fly tipping is, if it's on public land, then I think the code of practice on litter and refuse will apply, and they should clear it within a certain time. I understand the issue.
It is Southern Housing now.
Southern Housing, yeah.
Okay, so it's not public, although it's open.
It's behind the houses.
It's Southern Housing land.
Near Jubilee Field. That bit.
Okay. Yeah, interesting.
Where we mow the edge.
Yeah, okay, that's an interesting question. Okay, thank you. So, is that done with the public session? Good. Thank you. So we'll move on now to the agenda proper. So to confirm the minutes of the meeting that we held in March, the 13th, did anybody have any points? Paul, you said you do.
Yeah, I was trying to find which one it was. It was the one where we had reported on...
3747, talking about the CCTV.
Yeah,
yes,
at the last meeting, I put forward the three options, which I'll repeat again later on, which was to do with prosecution, prevention, and speed.
Yeah.
And we took a decision to decide on that we were going to focus on prevention rather than prosecution. The speed being handled by the SIDS. And I was mandated to go away and talk to suppliers, number one, get some costings on the appropriate equipment for prevention, or deterrent if you like, and secondly to go back to those villages in Kent that were very helpful in providing the information. Now we've got a sharper focus. So it's only a small point, but it's relevant to what I'm going to say in the update.
So what sort of words should we have there if this, I mean this was kind of jumping, I don't think we...
With regards to...
We jumped to the end, which was really saying that we weren't there yet, you know, but at any point you did say more on this.
Yes.
But this was saying that this is...
With regard to...
We basically decided to focus on prevention.
With regard to focusing on prevention.
Yeah.
Okay.
And further research is underway. And we'll talk about it later on, but it's relevant to George's point as well, which is before we make any full proposal discussion, we need to have all the information. Thank you.
Yes, so it reads as it was agreed that a proposal and costumes would be required before a final decision could be made with regard to focusing on research. Sorry,
on prevention, and further research is underway.
Focusing on prevention.
And further research is underway.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Does anyone else have any changes to propose? Is everyone happy with what Paul suggested there?
Good.
So can I sign these minutes?
Correct.
Okay. Right, that is done. So matters arising. The first one is update on PC's recordings of its meetings. Regrettably, you've heard some of this before, but regrettably the March recording was also indecipherable, like January's.
Not all of it though.
No,
it got
most
me,
of it.
It got me beautifully,
yeah,
and it got the public beautifully. But I'm afraid I couldn't hear anything of it.
Yvonne and I have conducted extensive experiments since then, and we think we have the answer. I won't go into it all, but it's settings on the computer and the way in which it relates to the microphone, and we've also put in place a new procedure in which Yvonne sets it up before we start and makes sure that it's ticking away. The trouble is she can't tell whether it's ticking away because she's using the computer to type on. It's doing it all in the background. But we think we've solved that now. It's regrettable we don't have March, rather like we didn't have January. February was all right. And we are now, fingers very much crossed and toes, that April onwards, tonight onwards, will be fine. We think we've got to the bottom of it all. Technology. So that's
interestingly, I've just gone into it and it's not showing. It's when I'm using the other as well.
What do you mean using the other?
Typing as well. Although we did do that, didn't we?
Yes, we did. I spent my time walking around my dining room making sure it would work in every direction, and Yvonne turned it on and off and did different settings and typed. And, yeah, it may be just that when I speak up a bit more, it is all right. Okay, I shall try to
shout in your dining room.
That's also true. It is smaller than this room, of course. What we have got is we've got the maximum gain on both the computer and the microphone, so there's no more we can do there. Okay, anyway, that's the update on recordings. So my apologies that this has not been as easy a process as we had hoped. We have got quite a lot. Last year, most of them worked. But then gremlins crept in. Okay, the DPI forms have been returned to ABC. Everybody's done them. Thank you very much. It was only a tiny change that we needed to do to satisfy ABC. And they've all gone, and hopefully their Director of Legal will be satisfied. It was all just to do with the fact that something to do with DP, whatever, GDP, whatever.
GDPR.
That's the one. And how they have to be kept, and everything has to comply with European law and that stuff. The third thing is the response to ABC Ashford on the handling of the 3 Buds Cottages planning application. And I think the first thing to do probably, well, let me just say a couple of words and then I'll adjourn to for Mick to say a few words. Bud's cottages we did last month, and we objected to the application, which had been amended since we objected the previous month or two. That objection went in by the clerk simply saying our comments from before still stand. Despite that, Ashford passed the application on Maundy Thursday. They consented it, which can't be undone. It's been consented. The neighbours wrote to the planning officer and copied the leader of the council earlier today, and the planning officer came back, and I think we've maybe had copies of that.
Yes.
It also ties in with something that predates most of you, but Paul will remember perhaps. July 2016, there was a case where the parish council objected to an application which was itself retrospective. You will remember. It was retrospective. It was down at Peening Court. I'm forgetting that you were here as well, so 3 of us. It was a retrospective application. We objected to it strongly. We felt that it was improper, really, and yet it went through. And I suggested at the following meeting, when we were all duly irritated, those councillors here at the time, I suggested to our borough councillor here that it might be a good idea if the borough council, were they to consider consenting to an application which we had objected to, the planning officer should talk to our clerk first to make sure that they understood our issues before then, if they wish, consenting it. We can't stop them consenting it, they only have to consult us. But at least they would consult us person to person as well as on the written statement. Were they going to override what we said? That's the reason for that was because if we say that we don't mind something and they turn it down, it doesn't really matter so much because the applicant can always appeal. But if we object and they grant it, there is no appeal available for intents and purposes. Unless someone wants to spend tens of thousands of pounds taking it to the High Court, the consent can't be undone. And I thought that was a good idea. I put it to our borough councillor. He went off to consult his colleagues at Ashford and came back the next month and he said, well, they already have that rule, they just didn't follow it. And this time they appear to have done the same thing. And they were reminded to follow it. This time they've done the same thing again. And I did think there may have been another case in between, but it wasn't quite as sensitive as this one, if there was. I'm not sure if there has been, but anyway, this is certainly the same thing. So, let me adjourn for a public session again, and you raise your response to this concern.
Yes, what your chairman's just said is absolutely right. I did take this back 18 months. I thought it was closer to 2 years ago, actually, but so
yeah.
And they did come back to me and say that, in fact, this rule was there, but it hadn't been sort of pressed into operation all the time. So I requested that it was. I was reminded, if I recall rightly, the time that there is about 40-something parish councils within the borough, and therefore it's got a lot of checking to be done. And there has been, unfortunately, and I am making an excuse, but it's not my fault either way, a change of staff in the planning department over the past 2 years, some of which means that they are not always fully aware of these smaller, relative to planning, smaller items of ringing up a clerk before the final decision is rubber stamped, which is basically what
only
when they're contrary to what the
parish council.
And I said it. It wasn't just.
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
Yes, I did request it.
Yeah.
Which
So I am more than happy to take this to the planning department again, which obviously my position in the council does aid me getting there quite easily. So, but I can't watch every planning application that goes out. In fact, it's quite difficult to keep up with all the ones just within this ward, actually, with 4 councils to follow, you see. And some of them are larger than others. And sometimes it's not the big ones that cause the anxieties. within the parish or parish council. So I'm more than happy to take this up. I apologise, I'm not unreservedly, with respect to the fact that the planning department hasn't kept up their promise to me, and I will take this up as soon as possible, but it will be this week. Any decision I get, I'll try and get them to send through to Clark. If not, I'll do that myself.
Thank you. That's helpful, Mick. I did draft a potential letter to discuss tonight to the new head of planning. There is a new head of planning now at Ashford, who came from Croydon, who I met at the CALC meeting last time in March. And I drafted a letter to him really raising this issue and saying, is it a rule like we're told or isn't it? If it isn't, what is the rule? And if it is, why is it not being followed? It is delicate because the planning officer concerned is one with whom the clerk has productive relations, which isn't, to be fair, always the case with others, and therefore, we don't really want to. This is always the trouble where something goes wrong, that it always becomes a matter of an individual, but in this case it's, as far as we know, systemic, although they don't happen very often. Clearly. So the question really for us tonight is, do we want to still write to the head of planning, or will we leave it to Mick to go and give a stir behind the scenes and try and get them to take this on seriously? I personally, my personal view is I'm all in favour of making ourselves known, if not a nuisance, to Ashford occasionally, so they remember we're here. But on the other hand, I have no sort of amour propre in terms of trying to, it's not an ego thing that we should give him a kick. If it's counterproductive, we want to maintain good relations with Ashford. They don't always please us, but they do things that we like. They're a better borough council than others to their parishes, I have no doubt about that, and I have reports from other people. Ashford do not treat their parishes badly, but that doesn't mean to say that they don't irritate sometimes. So what's people's view? I
think we should ask Michael to carry it forward on our behalf.
Okay.
I agree.
Happy to. Don't destroy the letter in case it's...
Did I hear you correctly to say that I saw the letter that went from the residents, the neighbours,
yes.
And hasn't been a response to that today?
Oh yes.
Because we were without power today for
okay. It came back
in the field.
It came back with a long defensive position.
Because I thought the residents had put their point very fairly, in a very balanced way, and it would be important, I think, for them to know that we cared about them enough to do this.
Yes, well, we'll certainly make this point.
That's important that the residents know.
I think
this is what came back from the officer.
It is an unhelpful defensive position.
An unhelpful one, yes. The other interesting thing is...
Doesn't mention Easter then.
She defends every point that was made, except the one that we're complaining about, which isn't mentioned.
That's right.
And yet it was mentioned in the complaint from the...
that might suggest that when she wrote it, she was aware of it.
It could well be.
I think Michael should be aware of
it could be,
that concern as well.
And it has been copied to the leader, both ways. So, that's another reason for, I think, Mick taking it back. So if everyone's happy with that, thank you very much for your... So we'll go back into, well, I suppose we have in effect gone back into the council meeting to make that decision. If we're assuming that it's still the same decision, we have decided.
Yes.
Right, thank you. It's enough to confuse anybody. Or I am. Right. I'm getting it from the clerk now. Okay, now we move on to...
Can I raise that actually under matters arising? Is that where I should move on when I mentioned to you about the community-led? You suggested raising it under matters arising.
I did, as an additional, yes.
Yes. Is that the name of the time? So it was just that in the minutes of the last meeting, one of the members of the public in the agenda to the meeting, summary of public session, Angela Goodwin-Day, raised the point about the community-led housing and what we were going to do about that. And she was feeding back from the conference which Councillor Sykes and I have been to. And it was noted that the last survey was over 5 years, and it usually takes almost a good year, 6 months to 12 months to get another one off the ground. And I was just going to raise the point that we had decided, we were saying that we should consider updating the survey, and I was going to suggest that we enlist the help again, as we're members of ACRK, who've got that expertise, and ask them if they could, spec out something for us to consider.
Sorry, who's ACR?
Sorry, Action for Communities in Rural Kent.
Oh, right.
Which I declare I'm a trustee, as is Mick, but one of their key focuses is on community-led housing, and they actually organised the conference that we went to, where we heard from mainly from Cranbrook, wasn't it?
Cranbrook.
The Crane Valley and Sissinghurst. It was very interesting, and we fed back, and we felt that you can't really move forward on some of these things and make decisions without the information. The last survey we did was a long time ago, and the suggestion I'm making is that we spec out, talk to people about how we might move that forward, and then I can come back and present the proposition, if you like, and we can decide. I don't know. Do you think that's...
Yes, I think that's. I think we came back feeling very strongly that in fact is that needed to be done to take anything forward.
Sure. I think that ties in very well with the fact that when we had the meeting in August last year, presenting the Ashford plan, which we're not happy with, for the 40 houses, there was a discussion that took place in the margins of that presentation between Simon Cole, who wrote that plan, and Paul and I, during which he did suggest that a housing survey would be useful. This is all a little bit topsy-turvy, of course, having a housing survey at this point when Ashford already decided that we should have 40 houses in an auspicious plot. But nevertheless, I think it makes sense to have a housing survey if we can. He did suggest that it was not within his pay grade, but he didn't see any reason why we shouldn't at least ask Ashford if they would help pay for it. And we might do that. The other thing is that what you went away and found out about the community housing trust ideas were very interesting. The big problem is that contextually it's completely messed up, because we've got a plan. I suppose they might be able to dovetail, but
they had that situation in Cranbrook, and that was the interesting thing. So Cranbrook and Sissinghurst have formed the Crane Valley?
The Crane Valley.
Yeah. And it was the most interesting. I'm not going to obviously replay everything we discussed last time, but they were very candid, and they felt that the boat is probably sailed in relation to the 200 plus houses that are going ahead in the middle of Cranbrook. But they took the view that the time had come that they actually had to start to think about the future and plan for the future, because they've been caught off guard, as we have. Because the 40 houses that we've been allocated, no one knows how many of those are going to be. The other interesting was local needs housing, as opposed to affordable. A local needs housing, in law, you can enshrine the fact that these cannot be sold on and on and on. You can put in all sorts of things that make sure that there are people who are local to the area, rather than people on that Ashford housing list who get moved in. And it was a big eye-opener for us. And the other thing that was a complete eye-opener for me was that the main partner in Cranbrook and Sissinghurst is the high-wheeled AONB. So they're working absolutely hand in glove on this community-led housing initiative. Now, they are long way ahead of anywhere we are. But I think that our first port of call is to get some up-to-date information. And I think that's where we are at the moment.
I think the one little point that Paul just made that I would put in a slightly different context. He was talking about Cranbrook being caught completely off guard by the 200 houses, and as he said, we were by the 40. We were by the 40 because, despite our support of it, Ashford had turned down the 27. And therefore, that was really where we were
at the time.
We were misdirected by Ashford, who then made a complete change of direction. And as we have discussed before, we feel that this is a worse site in terms of access. It's in the same A and B, etc. We don't have to go through it all over again. So the other thing I think is that, and I'm not fully aware of this, but it is my broad understanding that while it might have been a great idea to have been doing this 5 years ago, before the proposal for 40 came along, the rules have changed,
Yes,
the law has changed,
Yeah.
the money has
Yes.
changed, the
Yes.
housing crisis has changed, and therefore if we say, well, it would have been nice to have done it before didn't exist,
Yeah.
it's actually around now, and therefore we have the opportunity to say, okay, let's see if we can roll this ball in any direction that will prove to be useful. Incidentally, if the 40 houses ever get built, and I'm not at all sure they would, in terms of whatever Ashford thinks of, but if they ever did get built, we have no idea what they would build. Supposedly a third affordable, but who knows which, where, when.
Well, at least this way we would have information that was pertinent to our understanding, rather than someone in an office in Ashford deciding, well, we'll have our third, or 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom. You know, we owe it to ourselves, if you like,
and the residents of the village.
For local needs, of course.
Yes.
I mean, if they did build X number of houses, most of them would be people shipped in, because that's, I mean, I did, you did a long time ago, you did just now, you know, I mean, that's the way it is. But for local needs, of course, that's where we will pick up in the survey.
Yeah, that's right, precisely.
Well, I'll crack on with that.
Right, so is that what
So
you're
we
saying?
need then to take a decision formally. Are we keen to carry out a housing survey and seek funding for it, and to ask ACRK for their help?
And it's interesting, you know, that in terms of Cranbrook and that, they got it from Tunbridge and Morley. They supported financially, and in another project, Tunbridge well supported and Sevenoaks supported in their areas too.
Do we know where Rotherham got their funding from? Because they've done
No. It wasn't. It didn't crop up at the meeting.
That's beyond the survey, of course. There's funding, if anything.
Yeah, no, but yes, it's
all the
there is startup costs available funds.
Okay, so we've agreed that.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good. Thanks for raising that. So we're now going to go on to planning applications, and the first one is Pond Acre, 28A Poplar Road. Who would like to start us off on that?
No objection to it at all.
No, it was well thought out. I'm glad to hear that the neighbours are in support. Very clear cut.
And the neighbour, by the way, is on the side that is concerned, you know, not the other side.
Yeah.
It's the other side.
I think I'm hearing that I had no concerns.
Good. Okay, so that's unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you to the people for coming and helping us reach that decision. The Tiled House Farm, that is more contentious on the face of it. So we have this correspondence. I got a letter out of the blue from the lady who has had the planning application put in on her behalf. She lives in France. She is living in France tonight, that is why she is not here. I did reply to it. She got the reply today and emailed back, which Yvonne can now read it all out.
So it's written on the 14th of March to the Chairman. I'm writing to you as representative of the Wittersham Parish Council in respect of my recent application for a new house on the above site. I have an option to purchase the site from Regal Point Homes, subject to being granted planning permission. I'm hoping to be able to return to the UK from France, where I have had a house for some years. I would like to live in the area in a purpose-built property which suits my requirements. I'm aware of the planning history of the site, and I have engaged a professional architect to produce a new scheme which suits my requirements, being a single-storey, 4-bedroom house. The house is designed to be unobtrusive from all aspects and of a design in keeping with the rural nature of the site, as can be seen from the drawings. My professionals believe this addresses the issues raised in objections to the previous schemes. I have the benefit of the various reports produced for Regal Point Homes, the restrictions of which have all been adhered in my proposal. I would ask that the Parish Council support my application as it has done for earlier schemes, although for some reason not the most recent application. So the Chairman replied, thank you for your letter the 14th of March. which I saw on my return from a few days away, and I was interested to hear more details on the background to this planning application and your own circumstances following the earlier history of the site. As you will be aware, the Parish Council is a statutory consultee on all planning applications within the parish and can give its views to the planning authority, Ashford Borough Council, but they may be ignored, and on this site generally have been. That said, I can give no advance view of what the Council's position on your application might be, or even my own, until I hear a full range of views at the meeting. The Council's deliberations on your application will be held in public at its next meeting, which will be on Tuesday the 10th of April at 7:30 p.m. in the club room at the rear of the village hall in the street Wittersham, and while I realise you may be unavailable to attend it, your representatives will be welcome and able to speak to it during the public session held before the Council's deliberations get underway. I can add a note of explanation on why the Council did not support the last scheme, though it had done the previous ones for 2 and 3 houses on the site, while ABC rejected them all. We have 7 councillors, though 2 were absent that night, and there was, at that time, 1 vacancy. Of the 4 attending, 2 voted each way, but as one of those against was me, my casting vote as chairman was critical. On previous occasions, there had been some councillors against, but always more in support. I should add that I had changed my vote from support on previous occasions to object this time, on the grounds that I felt the gain of a single house was insufficient to justify the loss of a significant plot. Whether or not I will take the same view next time, since a bungalow automatically takes more ground space than a house, remains to be decided, and anyway the overall numbers will be different. And after all that, we must recognise that the decision is taken by ABC, we only give our views. Lastly, before closing, I did notice that some of the papers submitted by your representatives to support the application appear to be at fault. Most clearly, there is a reference to the bedrooms being on the first floor, more than one reference to Tenterden Road, which does not exist in Wittersham, reference to a planning document and others unnamed that does not appear, and a few minor points. I got the impression there had been some cut and pasting with insufficient care afterwards. I leave it to you whether you feel it worth tackling any of those points. I shall copy your letter and this reply to the clerk, who will bring them to councillors' attention and formally list them as correspondence in the usual way. Yours sincerely. Reply today, this went to the chairman and came to me as well. Thank you for your letter dated the 4th of April, which arrived today. That is the French post, I'm afraid. As you appreciate, I cannot attend the meeting and it is too late to ask my architect to do so. I hope that you have been able to support the application, as the council objected to the applications for 3 and 2 houses on, among other matters, on the grounds of overdevelopment of the site. A single bungalow cannot be considered as such. The plot has been demonstrated not to be significant in terms of the village. Indeed, there is a petrol station opposite, and unless I build this house, I believe it will remain an underdeveloped parcel of wasteland and become an eyesore for the village. I will ask my architect to investigate the issues raised in your final paragraph.
Thank you. So there we are. Who would like to start us off? George.
I think to start off to say exactly what we've said, that nothing has changed since we didn't support the last application that was for one property for the same reasons that we didn't support it. And I can't see the fact that it's on a single level is any different in terms of, all the reasons we gave before. In fact, as someone's already mentioned, it's a bigger footprint as such, so it actually takes up even more of the land. I am concerned about the comment about it will be a wasteland and things like that. I think that's probably an over-exaggeration. But, my view, I didn't support it last time with single property, and I wouldn't support it this time for the same reasons.
Okay.
Could I just mention that I have had, although they weren't here, I have had comments from 3 of the neighbours.
Oh, right, please.
Trevor Brown,
yes,
few down. He says he has no objection, but is concerned about the water that's running off from the site.
Right.
Gerald and Denise Ford at Safala, which is behind the garage, although that property will be going on the market shortly. They have no objection.
Right.
And Mr. and Mrs. Tyrrell, who live at Mount Pleasant, which is the other side of the field, they don't have any objection either.
Okay, so it doesn't upset the
Can I just
papers.
ask what the objections were last time, because I wasn't here.
Well, it
Well,
was
not all
two
of us
each.
objected.
It was two each way because we only had
Yeah.
4 people. It was still vacant because
Yes.
you hadn't arrived. So George was against. I was against because I said that it was only one house. It wasn't enough. I changed my previous voting from 4 to against because we were only
But you
given
said
one
it was
house.
turned down before because there were too many.
That's Ashford's turn.
That's
down.
Ashford,
Oh,
Council.
Ashford.
Is the, yes, let me just explain because this is a bit convoluted, Leslie. There was an original application by the developer for 3 houses and we felt that it was overdeveloped. In fact, it was a mess. And it was turned down by Ashford.
Right.
They then put in a different version of 3 houses, which we felt was better. They were a little bit more spaced. It was 1, 2, 3, but they didn't look quite as crammed. I think they'd changed garages or done away with garages or something. Maybe only one house had a garage, I can't remember now. So we supported that, but Ashford turned it down. So Regal Point then put in 2 houses. We supported, Ashford turned it down. Then they came back with, okay, let's just put 1 house in, and to several people's surprise, we went against it. And the reason we went against it was because we only had 4 people here, 2 yes, 2 no, because I was one of the no's, I having changed my vote because it was only 1 house. I felt, as we minuted at the time, I think, that, and it was in the letter, that to lose the plot for only 1 house, the gains and losses were wrong. So it went against. That's how it turned out. But Ashford turned it down yet again. And
Why did Ashford keep turning it down? May I ask?
um,
Briefly, I mean.
the irony is, I think, that they always turn it down because they feel that it is a breach of the conservation area, because it's in the conservation area. It's AONB, although the 40 houses are in the AONB. And they've just got in, and they of course turned down the 27 on the field next door 2 years ago. So they have just got into the habit of saying we don't like this, and I dare say whatever you put there, they would say we don't want it. But we'll, we can't prejudge their decision, nor can Nick. It'll be officers almost certainly a delegated decision.
Or a single house would be.
Yeah, sure. So officers will decide what they think. And it'll get approved or not by their boss.
Mr. Bax.
Mr. Bax. Oh, is Mr. Bax doing it and his boss will have to
No,
confirm it?
please, no,
He's
no,
not there.
pleased to know. But he's no longer there.
Mr. Bax?
Mr. Bax?
No.
Tice Bax.
Yeah.
And
No, he's gone.
Oh, right. Okay. So we have a new
So he was the guy that pronounced on the house beyond Nick Hurst, without, and then it was quite clear he'd never actually been, and because he was describing a different site.
Oh, yeah. Well, he did go, he went the wrong way.
Well, yeah, he didn't go to the right.
Right. So that's the explanation of how we got to this point. And so last time we were against, George and I, me having changed my vote, but the other 2 people who were here were for. You were for, and I think
I supported it.
So
one of the things that concerned us was the access, and we were concerned about the access onto the road.
That's right.
I mean, I looked at it, and I actually, on having thought it through, bearing in mind all the agendas that are in the air, one of which, of course, is the infill or the need for 35 or 25 houses in the village and so on. 40. On this occasion, I would support the application.
Okay.
Sure. I'd agree with Alan. I mean, I supported it last time when it was a 1-storey. It'd be nice to get 2, I think, but that wasn't sufficient to change our mind. All the reasons that were put forward, of course, now, excuse the pun, all been kicked into the long grass because of the 40. I mean, it's a complete nonsense. So if any of those reasons, that's quite interesting, if any of those reasons come back to turn this one down that were before, ergo, they should be applying the exact same reasons to the 40.
Oh,
so
it's a mess.
Well,
It's a mess.
Yeah. But that'd be an interesting
But
point.
I think I just want to make the point.
But I agree with that.
The reason Jeremy objected wasn't the same reason as the reason I objected.
No.
I objected, as already been said, because AONB and village conservation and the.
So your objection's more to the site itself.
Yes, in
rather
principle.
than what's going on with the site.
George has been consistent,
all the way through.
except that he did vote for the 3 and then when we came to the 2, you said you weren't quite sure
I think I
why you
dozed off
voted
at
for
that
the
previous
3
one
and
as well.
changed. But George has generally been against,
Right.
except for an error at the first one. Sue, your view?
I must support. I've supported all along. I think it's a prime piece. Yes, it would be nice to get more than one, but I've got to support it.
Okay. Colin?
Following my jet lag, where would the access be on this proposal?
Straight out the front, similar to Tile House, slightly nearer the village. In other words, they would both come out, you know, not together.
Hmm. Can I look, please? Your review on the Kidder's plan.
Yes.
Okay.
What do you think, Colin?
I understand where George is coming from. It just gives me some concern in the attitude of the letter that came in concerning it as a piece of wasteland, etc., etc. Having said that, I'll
They weren't
support.
saying
I'll
it is,
support.
they were saying it will become.
Well, that was their perception.
Yeah.
I also think it says something about the potential of the village too.
Says something what?
But the potential of the village, you know, the wasteland, everything, you know. But I'll support.
Okay, thank you. Leslie?
I see no reason to object. So, on the basis that if it's this lady actually wants to have it to live in herself.
That's what she says.
That's
You
what she
could never
said.
be sure, but that's
You
what
could
she
never be
says.
sure.
Okay.
Did you write
It
me
is-
down in the object?
I did. I've got a cross against George.
Good.
Well, against G, actually. My position is torn. It doesn't make any difference because
No.
we're voting for it. My position's torn. I still have this view that it's a big site to lose for one house. However, and I declare a personal interest here, I do think we don't have enough bungalows in general. I do live in one, a decent bungalow. I think it is quite helpful to the village to have a few bungalows, and that is what's being offered. It also won't be as visually intrusive as the lady says. That said, it is still only one house, so you know, I'm sort of like this. I think to be consistent, I would again say that I would object to it, but in fact the council has voted for it. So thank you very much. I think this is a tough one because it is important that we try to be consistent, both personally and as a council. And although every application has to be treated on its merits, and precedent isn't overwhelmingly crucial in planning, we should try to follow not too wavy a path. And I thank you all for doing that. It's tricky, but anyway, thank you very much. So we are supporting that, which has been, apart from last time, our general run through on this one. I wouldn't count on Ashford supporting it.
Do we want to make any, we're talking before about bullet points, do we want to make any actual comments, apart from just...
Well, I think the comment about the proposed increase in housing stock that Ashford
is demanding.
Is very valid, and therefore it rather refutes any objection.
It's the irony that they feel we need 40 houses, but when there's an opportunistic, what they call windfall one, on a site that is now out of use. I mean, whatever else you say about it, forget wildlife for a moment. It is out of human use. It used to be human use. It was an orchard for Tile House. It's out of use. It's fenced off. There's a house available. It's bizarre that they didn't go for 2. But anyway, we'll see what happens. So thank you. Right. I think that's our toughest decision tonight. So now, Paul, on to CCTV.
So just for the benefit of those members of the public who weren't here last time, the background to this is originally not an initiative from the parish council. This was in response to quite a few members of the public in the village who had basically had enough of burglary, theft, vandalism, etc., etc. There were all sorts of different suggestions made. They were put towards the parish council. We tried to corral those into some meaningful discussion areas. So people were saying, well, if we had CCTV, we'd be able to give the police the evidence that they say, well, sorry, no one's got any evidence, no one's got any registration plates, no one's got, we can't do anything about it. So the response from some of the people in the village was, well, if we had the court on camera, we could provide that evidence. The second point was people saying, well, if it was made aware that we were more active in terms of neighbourhood watch and CCTV, not into people's private gardens or private properties, no intrusion of privacy in that respect, but just generally in some key areas, then that could act as a deterrent. And then the old chestnut, which is that it would reduce speeding in the village, although if you talk to the police in Kent, or in other villages, generally speaking, the people that speed in any village actually happen to be the people who live there, not visitors from far and wide. And so that came under the heading of be careful what you wish for. So we had these three scenarios, prosecution, prevention and speed control. So at the last meeting, I went away and I spoke to a number of different villages. Those in Kent were included Goudhurst and Speldhurst, who were very, very helpful, and they gave me a lot of information that allowed me to come back at the last meeting and say, which of these options we can have 1, 2, 3 or a combination. And we decided that probably the speed issue in the village was being addressed by the speed indicator device project that's underway. And then it's a choice between prosecution and prevention, and the feeling of the parish council at the last meeting was that we should focus on deterrent, prevention, rather than setting ourselves up as an authority to try and catch people to prosecute them. Where I am at the moment, I'm back to Goudhurst and Speldhurst and a couple of other councils to say, okay, we've got a much clearer idea of what we're looking for now. Can we just go to talk to the next people? There's an ex-policeman in Goudhurst who is the leading light in their neighbourhood watch, who they put me in touch with, who will have a lot of information, helpful information on there. And I'm also in touch with getting in touch with a couple of other suppliers with a goal to come back, and it's not ready yet, and it might take a while, with answers to the question, okay, well, what's it going to cost and what do we get for it? Because I think until we get that, we can't make a decision. And then partly it's going to be, have we got the money? But I think that the overall objective is twofold. One is that if we're going to do this properly, it needs to be thoroughly researched and investigated. And secondly, we need to be seen by the people who across the village who requested this in the first place, that we've actually got off our bottoms and done something about it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the summary is work in progress, I guess.
Okay. I think
any questions on that at all?
The reason that we had the item on the agenda as it was because we've had in the past times where we've come to want to make a decision, but it didn't have a decision on the agenda.
Yeah.
And we didn't think a decision was actually on the cards, but it's there, the same as last month, because there could be a decision.
Yeah. The other thing I think is worth mentioning,
even if it was not,
Mr. Chairman, is that in the light of the comment from the public session earlier on, I don't see this as something that the parish council just review and say, right, let's go ahead. I think that we need to prepare a case which is properly researched, and then, by all means, get some, I don't know, is public consultation the right phrase? That sounds like a sort of major, QC-led planning council. I think what we have to do is we have to give people in the village the opportunity of asking questions and putting their viewpoints. And I, for one, would certainly not support anything that was constituted an invasion of privacy. But, we're talking about highways here and public buildings.
Sure. Okay, any questions, Paul?
No.
No? Okay, thank you for
Please
that.
proceed.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So the next thing is the quotes received for cleaning the war memorial, which Yvonne has got in, and she circulated today. The one thing I did spot, Yvonne, I wasn't sure if it was me or if there was a bit of confusion in the last paragraph of the email. I asked for quotes from Burslams and Cleverly and Spence, who quoted in 2007. Burslams quoted 600, Cleverly and Spencer 1550. We accepted the quote from Burlight. I wasn't sure if Burlight was Burslem. No, okay. For 1200. They've since gone into liquidation. It's 2000.
I thought I hadn't. What I was getting was that I hadn't obviously asked for a quote from them,
Right, okay.
whereas I had from the two.
The last time the memorial was cleaned, it was in February 2013. Previously, you were saying you had quoted in 2007, so I thought this was 2013. The only quote I could get then was from Inspire. Okay. So that's all as it stands.
Yes.
Okay, fine.
So then we've got one.
So I've only got one.
One
I've
quarter,
chased
that was
the
it.
other.
That's it, yeah.
I've chased it Cleverly and Spencer. I mean, they were, when I asked for the original quotes, they were, oh yes, like
Yeah.
Until
And then when it comes to get it, but JF Stoneworks are the ones they do most of the memorials.
Yeah.
And once again, I've got a good rapport with Jenny's the girl. She'll ring me up. Can I do it yet? Can we put it in there yet? And so I'll let you know. I go down, check, and let her know. You know, she is.
How much are we,
seen it,
based on the quoted one,
come into
what's
this.
what's the cost?
1,150. So that's why I gave you sort of what we've been doing,
Yeah.
because it is so many years before.
But that's also with some repair work that they found
Yes,
as
we've
well.
got ready to join
Crackings and
Thanks for coming.
Bye.
So,
Thanks for coming, John, Diane.
so this is about 1,400,
Well,
no,
it's without VAT, 1150.
1,150.
Because we get that back.
You get that.
Yeah, 1150, that's without the
Without
VAT.
that,
So,
yeah.
so it's,
Thanks for coming, Seamus.
Yes, they say clean the memorial using tower scaffold is 1,050, and then to rake out and repoint open joints where cracking, there are also a few stones that are cracked where we can make small repairs, is 330. So sorry, that's the total. 875 and
It's-
275.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
the others included that.
I don't know whether this is pertinent, but I noticed, I don't think it's on the agenda for tonight, but Colin and I were asked to look into the War Memorial from the point of view of adding names for the armistice. And I was asked to actually find out what I could about the building of the War Memorial.
Right.
Which I can come on to it later, but I don't know whether you probably are aware, I wasn't aware, that it's actually made of two different types of stone.
Right.
Portland stone is...
Portland stone for the main thrust of it, but the base of it is a different stone, that's all, and I don't know whether that had any connection with the fact that it's stained.
It's stained badly, yes.
Um,
It could do. Is this the information from the listing on the heritage
Yes.
site? Yes, because I think they've got a bit there. It is a bit of a worry, this all ties together, it's a bit of a worry that it may be something we've just got to cope with, that the proposal by the people who have quoted JF Stoneworks have said they want to do it with pressure washing and chemical. Now, the War Memorials Trust advice on their website is only ever do hand cleaning with water.
That's right.
The trouble is that that's no doubt good advice and will be less damaging to the stone, but it's no help if it doesn't get the dirt off. They have said that if it was done and brought up nicely, then annual maintenance would keep it good easily. Now, that may be a lesson for us, that we should get it done every year. The trouble is that this is expensive, partly because it's 2 or 3 days, but partly because they want to bring a tower along, which makes a big, and you can't, do it with a ladder, I doubt. So it is, if we did it every year, it would run up quite a lot of money, but it may be that we are putting at risk this important listed structure. in terms of erosion if it's going to take a heavy blasting all the time.
Because you're not actually cleaning it, you're just removing a layer of stone.
Well, exactly. I mean, I
Absolutely
know that
clean surface.
I know that the dangers of using a high pressure washer. I've learnt to my cost that it tends to just shoot out all the mortar in between. If this is weak and has got repair work needs to be done, high pressure jet washing. I mean, it might sound a bit silly almost, but it's an interesting point you make about the fact that it's a different stone, and was that the bit that was coloured? I mean, should we not at the very least just do the sort of water and scrubbing brush bit round the base of it to see if that has any effect? I mean, it's not going to cost us £8,000-9,000.
The base is actually
the bit
Wealden
we can reach.
sandstone.
Well,
and it's the monument.
I think it's entirely appropriate to clean it now because it's.
The other thing was how much time have we got?
I mean, just speaking from myself, I think it would be inappropriate to clean it every year or every 2 years or even every. Because there's some sort of respectfulness in allowing it to age with the people who are commemorated.
Have a pattern, its own pattern.
All the time.
And I think, perhaps in 2118 we'll do it again, or 2050 or something. But I don't think we'll want to do it every.
We've done it every few years. So
we might even want to push that back a bit.
Yeah.
And
the stem and the orb or whatever it is on top are not critical to do. I mean, it would be silly not to do them if we're doing the rest. But what is really unsightly is not merely the fact that the bottom is stained, it's stained disruptively. It's like a sort of camouflage pattern, isn't it? It's all...
Yes. So having it clean now is fine, but I don't think we need to worry too much about the cost over the next 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 years, because I would certainly vote against cleaning it too regularly.
I would agree with you.
I think
I think it needs to be done this year, and then at some future date.
But I'm not going to worry about the cost beyond that, because
no.
I don't think we
If
need
you're
to.
looking at 21 something, you needn't worry about it.
Yeah.
Well, if he's suggesting he's going to be here in 21.
Back in the day, you'd have given this job to the local scout group. Seriously, you'd have given them, 4 big scrubbing brushes and 3 pails of water and some soap.
And you said 3 shillings.
Yeah, exactly. And fast forward to today. Could we not at least investigate whether the base could actually be clean with?
Yeah, it might be worth trying
water and
with
soap.
not a wire brush, but
A proper scrubbing
ordinary
brush.
scrubbing brush,
Wire,
traditional.
whatever it is.
And water and some fairly ordinary detergent like fairly.
Get one of those patio brushes which has got no, it's got the same
the
sort
wire
of
ones.
No, it's got a scrubbing brush.
Years ago.
And Alf couldn't get it off.
Well, I think he had a good old scrub, but I don't think it was easy.
Yeah.
But it wasn't, and whether it actually...
Who was that, Alf?
Alf,
Yeah.
I mean, it is definitely an issue, as George correctly put it, that if you blast it with pressure washing, you really take off the top layer of stone. If you're doing it with detergent, the detergent might take the dirt off rather than the stone. But on that basis, do you actually need the pressure? And what pressure do they mean? Do they mean the sort of low pressure washers that they sell in B&Q for washing your car, or do they mean serious?
Well, I've got one of those, but if you've got the jet on the Arabus,
that's right.
You could write your initials.
You can quite
You can actually cut concrete with a water jet.
You can, yeah.
We don't want it to really look shiny new.
No.
Actually,
No.
we want it to look cared for. We don't want it to look shiny new.
Yeah.
Do we have a local person who could at least... I mean, I'm not suggesting Alf couldn't do it, but he might have other things on his schedule as the spring is now well advanced and he'd get very busy. But is this... I'm not thinking of Sid and his
I was just
ladder.
about to say Sid would be...
Sid. But he'd have a ladder. He'd be up like a rat out of a drain pipe.
Yeah, would he come down?
Would he come down?
Yeah, for sure.
I do think we should...
I don't mind going out there with a bucket of water and some detergent and giving it a scrub and see what the outcome is. I'd quite happy to do that.
Sorry, this is the vote. I've woken up. In fact, I think you've got it there. I think that the Legion could lead.
Oh, there we are then. Yeah.
I think
There's only one Legion member going up there,
to offer them to do it. I think that's an optimum solution.
I'll put it to the branch on Thursday
That
night.
is that's a very good offer.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll try and see what the outcome
What
is.
we need
I
to
think we
do
could have a group,
is
yeah.
to carry out, what we need to do is carry out this experiment soon because
Yes.
then we've still got
Yeah,
more time if
time
we
to
need
get
to
it
go
done.
for Plan B.
But yes.
I do it
It's
this week.
worth a case.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And we
Cleaning
can pay
party.
for fairly liquid.
That's
Yes.
right. I think I can provide fairly.
Okay.
So in the meantime, Leslie
Don't use all
has
our
presented a small paper in terms of what she's found out so far.
No, I haven't. I've just printed off what I found out.
Oh, you've
I'm
got
not
me
taking
done.
credit.
Well,
No.
I want to give you two. You know what the information we found out about it so far.
I mean, as mentioned, it is off the English Heritage website. But I did first of all inquire with the War Memorials Trust.
Yeah.
They do not provide historical information, even through their conservation officers. They are there purely on funding and conservation.
Right.
So I don't know whether it's worth asking them or some.
Well, they're the people who say only use water.
Yes, that's right.
Say
Yeah.
use water.
Yes,
That's
the
right.
first time
Yeah.
we had it cleaned, we got a grant from them to do it
Right,
back in 2007.
right.
I was fascinated. I just had a quick look at it tonight. That in fact is the actual piece of land was given by Medway Brewery.
Mm.
Well, they owned the field.
They own the field.
Mm.
So was it given to
With
the village?
pub, was it?
The Ewan Land.
That's why the sign's over there,
Yeah.
the
Ewan
side of the
Land.
road.
Yeah.
We're not. I don't think that sure whether we got the land.
Yes,
but
we have got the land. I found, yes.
yeah, we will one way. Of course, we will one way or the other because.
Yeah,
We have-
but
we
I
got
think I've
the
just
rest of
got clarification in terms of they presented it. What it doesn't say is to whom.
For just out of the
Ah, right.
Okay.
So the
Yes,
village or the parish
answer them.
council.
You can go back in the
The
question,
clerk has
George.
confirmed that we were given that separately.
Separately.
And then we bought the rest, the green and the Coronation Field, from the same people.
So we own it.
Yes.
I mean, whether it wasn't actually called Medway Brewery, but it was a brewery in Maidstone that we bought it from. Yeah.
It might have been the old Medway Brewery, then became
Start
thing.
with.
So in a sentence,
That's it.
so the piece of land is owned by the village
Yeah.
then.
But in any event, whether or not we own a memorial, legislation after the Great War gave parish councils
Yes.
the right to take them over
But that's right.
and treat them as if they are.
Yeah, it was.
And
And look after
actually,
them.
when
So,
we were asked
It is our
about-
responsibility.
asked about when English Heritage wanted to list
Yeah.
it, we were asked whether we owned it.
Anyway.
We signed that we.
For anyone who wants to have a look, that's what I found out.
Well done, President.
The question being is the second half of this is that now I'm back again. I will do some further investigation on the two gentlemen to see if we can
Oh,
get
yeah,
some
yeah, that's
quantitative
what-
result.
Yes.
I got the basic information now from Tony, so
The
I will
interesting
progress
thing
it.
there is firstly that we got a quote for putting the names on, which is actually very reasonable.
It is reasonable.
I thought it was all right.
Secondly, the thing that you need to have in mind as well as the research is where they fit.
Yes.
Because I did photographs of them all and discussed with Yvonne, and that is actually quite tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went and had a look at it. Yeah.
Because it's partly 1418, partly
Yeah.
3945 is easier, I think.
It is than the other one,
Yeah,
yes.
where they
1418
where
is
they
not-
appropriately fit as opposed to where physically they might fit. You mean?
Yeah, I mean, they could be put in somewhere else,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't be in the right
No.
list.
Does that- does that need to be chiselled? Is it chiselled? Engraved.
Engraved.
Before the cleaning. Because if we clean it, well, that's the point I'm saying is that it's a chicken and egg into a situation.
The problem, that's another point, of course. If they do engrave the names, those bits will be nice and white in what may otherwise be black.
Well, it will say
Black.
something, but it will say something to the village that if that is the case that we're able to do that,
Yeah.
we've at least addressed the issue on behalf of the Legion and the village.
For sure.
I think we should mandate the parish council in 50 years' time to clean it, so that we've got a track record planning ahead. To take Alan's point, that we're not going to do it every year, but we're taking responsibility for future. So, anyway, that's the
I would have
Sure, you
thought.
know, we're going to parish council in 50 years.
So we can afford the actual naming if we get to that point.
Yeah.
No problem.
But it's not on the agenda, so we're not.
We can't decide.
We're not agreeing that yet.
No, I'm not suggesting. I'm just saying is if we get to that stage,
On
can
the,
we-
on the face of it, we have enough money to cope with it.
fine. On the face of the woman world.
Okay.
No,
We
no
can't
call.
actually mandate the parish council to do anything, just as a guiding point, by the way. Okay, on we go.
I've forgotten now.
The parish council now has now got an official scrubber.
Okay.
That could be an interesting ad in the Outlook, couldn't it? Wanted village scrubbers. Scrubbers
Back to
wanted.
the agenda.
Right, okay, come on. We've dealt with the
That was George who was being sensible.
Thank you to the clerk for getting all of that done. Now we've got to authorise some payments. Are we agreed that we're sending Yvonne up to London to learn all about varying people?
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
we agreed it, it's just
Yeah.
payment.
Okay.
Done that.
Well, it says for authorisation.
Yes.
So we're
Yes.
authorising it.
Yes.
Calc pay, that's the pay system that pays Yvonne and Alf and takes the tax off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Calc's annual membership came in as correspondence, and ACRK, we automatically pay that annual membership, don't we?
Well, if everybody
think we
agrees.
should.
do need to agree it.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the count? Just remind me what the count cost is annually.
Well, it's £399.30.
Remind me to put the ECRK up to £399.
It includes the
Next year.
Yeah,
Why
the
is
calc.
overall case? It's actually so much easier.
What's the
The
30p?
calc part includes the subscription to NALC.
Yes.
Okay, come on. ICCM annual membership is £90. We agreed it last year.
Yes.
And Yvonne is off for this course to learn about what we should be doing. The PKF Little John have done, there's the audit is going to be on the 11th of June, and the annual return will come for completion. But that'll have to be after we've reviewed all the figures tonight.
Yeah, that'll be on the agenda for next month.
It will indeed, and then we have to go through a very detailed thing in the right order where we agree certain things and sign certain things and then agree other things, and it's a right kerfuffle, palaver and several other things. ABC requested the emergency plan. KCC have given us official notification of the members' grant of £4,500, but they couldn't pay us until April because they'd run out of money.
No, they run out of efficiency.
That's the other thing.
Is that the new
They
name
did
for
that.
money?
That's a new word for money.
They ran out of efficiency.
Well,
Is this for Sid?
Yes.
Oh, right.
Yeah, we were told we had to wait. Working party reports. Caretaker.
He's picking up the trailer tomorrow. The new
Good.
trailer.
Good.
Picking it up tomorrow.
Have we
Tomorrow.
sold the advertising boards on the side of the trailer?
Sponsored by.
Yeah.
Finance, we've got the monthly statement here that you had. I had one query that I'm sure there's a simple answer to, but I don't know what it is. Reimburse shredder on the monthly transaction. Is that something to do with the VAT or something? Reimburse
On board the
shredder.
shredder, isn't she?
But reimbursing me,
Yeah.
It's a
me,
new paper shredder.
reimbursing
No, that's
for
okay.
the shredder.
No, I tell you why I went. I thought that was wrong because I thought it was for shredding green things, not your ones, not your paper shredder. Okay, that's understood.
This is evidence, not
Yeah.
When everyone puts in for a leaf blower, we'll know what's up.
That's all right. That's all I had. Does anyone have any queries on the transactions or the extraction that goes on the caretaker side? No. So can I sign that?
Yes, you may.
Good. Yeah. So they're done then. Now we get on to the slightly more difficult ones, which are the end of year, which Yvonne has been burning midnight oil candles or whatever to get ready. From 10 days ago. So the first one I think probably is the end of year statement, which is, as you can see, budget and actual. Don't know if anyone has got any queries on that. It all looks pretty comfortable, to be honest, from
Yeah.
that point of view. What we do have really is a financial position in the council now where we are capable of withstanding things that come along. We're not sort of, oh, we can't do anything because we can't afford anything. We are, I said last month that our precept stands pretty good comparison in Ashford, and it's not the lowest, it's not the highest.
What was it that enabled us to remove position from position A to position B? What was it that changed? Because
we put basically, I mean, the blunt thing is that we used to not charge enough. and we have over a period of years increased our precept to get money in ready for the cemetery, which we knew we had to do. And as I mentioned a couple of months ago, we've got enough money to do the cemetery, and after that, that amount of extra money per year, not a huge amount, but enough, that comes in each year, and it gives us resilience. And it gives
We've
us
only
the
put our
ability to
precept
spend
up
money.
as much as any other council, though, haven't we?
Well,
Well, the thing
then
was, we
we're
weren't.
efficient.
We
weren't.
We weren't before.
We were being
didn't
terribly
put it up.
kind to our populace.
Yes,
weren't
we didn't put it up. As you say, we're only putting it up small amounts, but we
Yeah.
have been doing that regularly, whereas we didn't beforehand. We were just so proud that we didn't.
And the thing is that
it didn't work.
I think we should be careful not to charge people money that we shouldn't be too casual about charging people money that they find hard to find.
No.
But we should recognise that the amounts that we deal in are actually not very big. You know, our precept is sort of 2 years worth of KCC's increase. You know, it's something of that sort. It's not that huge.
But we shouldn't be collecting money just for the sake
shouldn't
of having
collect
a
money
buffer
just-
there. either,
we
should
shouldn't collect money
Might
just
get
for
to that
sake
point
of
where we think,
it.
right, we've got enough for what
Absolutely.
we need, we
shouldn't
won't
collect
put it
money
up
for
this year.
We shouldn't, indeed, and we only put it up 2% this year. Shouldn't collect money for the sake of it, but the residents like services, like things to be improved, and when I first came, and Sue goes back before that, and Paul came when I did, we really were saying, can we afford this, or do we have to wait till next year? Right now, we have the luxury of being able to say, what do we want to do on behalf of the village? Okay, let's get on with it. That is such a comfortable position.
You know, other parish councils out there which have massive reserve funds because
And we're only just beginning.
They do they? That's a habit around the
There
country.
are some with
Well, some have
amounts.
large amount of land, and some
Land
of
as
it's been
well.
sold off, so they boost their coffers that way. I mean, I think it's also fair to say, and I take very little, if any, credit as a council for this, but I think that, and it's no denigration of past officers, but I think that the good health, to answer your question, is in a significant part due to the housekeeping of Yvonne and Jeremy.
Yes.
In that. I mean, let's not beat around the bush. It wasn't radical surgery that was needed, but I just get the sense that we've just been a little bit more inventive or careful, or and we've done some good housekeeping.
And the other thing, to be fair, is that John Rivers set us on this path. Because he used to hear from Ashford and Kent what the vibes were. He used to warn us every year that capping was possible. It never came, but it was possible. And he always used to say, we're not likely to get capped this year, so let's get a bit in while we can, because it may not last. And in fact, we managed a few years worth. But the whole difference is probably on a Band D property. What have we gone up by? £10 a year. That's times 500 properties gives us £5,000 a year that we didn't have. And in our terms, £5,000 a year is a lot of money. But to anyone, even if they are really hard up, it's still only £1 per 10 instalments. That is not going to be that noticeable when some of the others are going up large amounts. Our precept is, like the police increase. Okay. So, can we accept then the end of year statement? Is everybody happy with that?
Yes.
I put on the agenda that we could ratify it at the next meeting because I hadn't at the time got the bank statement, and I didn't want to do anything before I couldn't. However, the bank statement came in this morning, so now everything is right. And another reason is that I normally leave you to mull it over, take it away, and have a think about it, and see if there's anything you want to ask me in between times. So I'm happy to ratify it at the next meeting if you want, or it can be.
The only thing is that you need to be on a clean page for getting the annual report together for next time, don't you? Are we going to do that in May, or are we going to delay it till June?
No, the annual report has to be done next.
Okay, and it'll have to be on the basis that all your figures are accepted. Otherwise, you'll still be scrabbling around with us saying we don't like the figures.
Yeah, but if I put it on the agenda beforehand and we've agreed it beforehand, then that's what we normally do.
No, but then we would have agreed it now. What I mean is, if we don't agree it till next month, how are you going to do the annual report without knowing whether we've agreed the figures? Whereas if we agree
Because I know
them
they're
now,
right.
if we agree them now, then you're okay. That's all I
Yes, I mean, that's
The fact you know them right is irrelevant.
I did have one
Yes.
very small
Yes,
question.
yes, do.
The unpresented cheque.
Yes,
Um,
that was the planning application for the path that went round the cemetery that got lost in Ashford's.
oh right, fine.
thing
End of.
somewhere.
I
And
was just
was
worried it
hoping
might be
would turn
some
up.
local person who'd done
No.
some work and lost their cheque.
No,
In which
no.
case I was. But that is
Ashford
Ashford.
Borough Council.
No,
Fine.
So it came
End
back
of
in.
questions then.
You,
Nick didn't hear that.
you wish to withdraw that statement, don't you, Paul? Yes.
It's a directional mic. It hasn't worked out. It only picks up Jeremy and Yvonne.
I agree with Jeremy. I think it was to make things move quite more
Yes,
quickly.
okay, works. Right, so that's the one.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anything down, you just
Sorry.
say column.
And then obviously the receipts and payments. That is
Yeah.
more. That is more important because this is the one that
That's
does
the one that goes on to the thing.
the works, goes with the cash
That's
book,
sure.
that
Yeah.
is everything. So if you look at the figure that the bank balance is the same as the one that was in your previous
Yes, right.
sheet.
Yeah.
So that itemises everything.
Is everyone happy with this one? Everything is down there. The contingencies, you'll note. You see, this is where you come back to this comfort point. We put 4,100 into the budget for contingencies. We spent 2,000 of it. But that 2,000 was when we found we had to spend money on the defibs.
Yeah.
We bought the new laptop. We paid the equipment out for Lee Phelan, the warden.
Yeah.
We decided to join in Victor Law and we decided to join Satswell.
That's right.
And all of that money just
What's it say?
came out of bit of spare.
No, I've got end of year
Yeah.
and receipts.
Yes.
So I was looking at Jeremy. He had a sort of
Oh,
a
it's
spreadsheet.
because he's printed it out on his phone.
Ah, right.
No, this Paul,
Yeah,
this
yeah,
you've got the same as.
Excellent. Fine.
Okay.
You tell them, Paul.
So can I assign the receipts of payments to everybody?
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Please.
That's
Is this the right one?
that's receipts and payments. You've just signed the
Yeah.
end of year.
Mhm.
That's the one that you.
Oh, sorry, this one. I had two end of year statements because you gave me another one. I came with one and you gave me another one.
I see you asked for
Yeah,
that.
indeed, yes I did. And the caretaker scheme, they're going to pay us our contribution late this year, aren't they?
Yes.
Because of
They
their
have.
efficiency.
They will be paid.
Yes. We're going to get two this year because we didn't get one last year.
Oh.
They managed after the
they
whole
were
year not
really
to pay it.
SEC were.
But you have put them on the spot
I have.
and they are promised. They're on a promise, aren't they?
Okay.
So that all balances. Bank balance at 72. The 120 is just the control
Make sure,
figure.
yes.
No, it's a control figure, I understand. No, it's, 10.42. Okay. Now this is the one where you actually have to think. Is now the reserves. And I think this is a very helpful way of presenting it from Yvonne. So we've got a bank balance that we just saw, the 72,000. Some of that is actually in the caretaker account, which is a memorandum account, part of the parish council. So 11,006 is in the caretaker account, okay, which can do things like buying equipment. 11,816 is in the burial account. Good practice used to be held by Yvonne that you didn't put burials in the budget. They just, and having not put them in the budget, we never kind of spent them. They just collected. And the view I've taken, and I think we've discussed it here before, is that that should now be cleared into the cemetery project.
Yeah.
And then less is held under these particular reserves, 17,000. So that means that spare money, as it were, is 31,385, not in reserves, not in burials, not in caretaker. The reserves that we hold, cemetery maintenance 2519, this is a historic one I think. Churchyard maintenance, and we've added a bit this last year, we budgeted for that. We've got this, and then the wall that we know about, which is moving very slowly, I think it would be fair to say. The war memorial cleaning, you see we've got 2,000 put in place for that, so actually we're ahead there.
Yes.
Website, that's a long-standing traditional thing. We put money aside a long time ago and then did it without paying out money. Pond project, that's sitting fallow at the minute, it's the Village Green project. Water supplies, if we ever get charged for water at the Triangle. And the cemetery extension, there's that 1658 is just vacant, is it?
It's what we started putting in the budget last year. So
Okay,
it's
right.
what was left out of what we.
So it's kind of an ad, is it, or is it in the other one? Anyway, 1658.
Yeah, and then it went out, obviously.
That's 17354, which you saw before, but this is where it comes from. Then there's the burial account 11816. We've had 880 in this year. There's a point worth noting, we get very little for burials, really. The reason we've got 11,000 is because there's a lot of years worth.
And other years, this year has been low.
I was going to say, how many people do we bury?
2 last year.
Really?
Yeah. Out of how many you could have been?
We shall have to do better.
That's an interesting point. Actually, given the fact we're now going to have all this space, we can't take any outsiders, can we, and raise a bit of money that way?
You charge me.
No. Well, we might consider not tonight, obviously, but some
this
advertising.
We used to.
Before,
when we didn't have that much money, we were getting low. We did do this sort of thing.
We did talk about it.
Actually, go on the side of the trailer.
Get your plot
Stop me and ask me where.
Okay, let's move on.
Lots for sale.
So, now what we've got to consider is our cemetery extension.
I was going to say we could go American.
The cemetery extension is...
Run out to Homer.
We've talked about these numbers before. We had a wet finger total of 30,000 before, but we're starting to firm some of them up. We've still got 10,000 in for the access route, which is the permeable paving. Cost of ploughing land, we've now got the figure to go with of 900. Tree felling, a figure to go with of 1250. Stock fencing, a figure to go with of 2050. Hedging is a wet finger of 5,000. Whether that's too much, too little, or whatever, it's quite a lot of hedge. Now we're hoping we can get some grants, but
That's right.
we haven't opened yet.
Yeah.
And the other works, costs and contingency, 10,000. That was what we originally put in, just on the basis that who knows what could happen. Okay, that comes to 29.2 instead of the 30 that we originally had. I would be disappointed if we spent that much, but we are able to and ready to if we need to. Because what we can't do is sort of get halfway.
No, there'll be other things we haven't thought of.
Exactly, exactly right. Then there's, and the other thing is we're dealing with ground conditions. Who knows when they start derooting and ploughing what's going to happen?
Well, they're fine.
I did make the point, didn't I, about making good from the access to the road, from the road all the way around, because when they're moving machinery around, they're going to do some damage in the orchard, which will have to be paid for.
Yes, it has been done before by the orchard people, which he doesn't seem to worry about.
No,
we'll see how much fuss he makes. Now the burial account, of course, has got the 11.8 to set against that, and we've got the 16.58, so that comes up with 15.7. That 15.7 and the balance of the SIDS, as you can see, that 18,000 comes off the 31 at the top, leaving us with 13,000 cash, in addition to the reserves that we're not actually committing at this moment. So again, we're not on our uppers.
No.
If things go a bit pear-shaped, we can take a few blows.
Well, we need to invest in something else.
Well, indeed. Well, one immediate thing is the path to the bus stop. You know, that's going to be costly. We haven't put that in yet because we said, I said in previous months, which no one disagreed with, we get the cemetery out of the way before we take the next one.
That's right.
But then, if we want to have that path, we've got to pay out several £1,000s to do it. This will go from the little ring in the green, which is the garden, across to the gate by the bus stop. So that if you walk from the street, School Church Hall, to the bus stop or crossing the road to the Ewan Lamb and the estate, instead of walking round the war memorial, which is
Right.
quite dangerous, you can cut through the field without getting wet.
Sounds
muddy.
good.
Incidentally, it's worth mentioning, I mean, it's not connected there, but I continue to have positive comments about the hedge being cut. It's particularly recently, because everyone can now see all the daffodils.
That's right.
Primroses that are in there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
It
now,
seems to be
Al's been making a real effort to keep it nice.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
No, it's great. I
Yeah.
had a chat with Phil this afternoon on a different matter, and just he said, without me prompting him, he said every time he goes and looks at it, he's even more pleased.
Yeah,
And I said to Phil, because this was entirely right, I said, well, it was really you who put the sort of compromise position together, which was the one that we signed up to. And it's worked very well.
Very well, very well.
I think it was George.
You're off.
For the microphone.
Thank you for coming. We will leave you to...
We hope we get a positive response from your inquiries.
Do you have to say Councillor Burgess?
You know, we got to score it here to 10.
Right.
Do that, right?
Okay.
You
Good
know.
night, all.
Good night, Dave. Take care.
Good night, Mick.
Jeremy, I'll be back.
Okay.
You can have this.
Right, okay. We've done all of the end of year statement then.
So what we've got to agree this one, this is the important one.
Yeah.
This is the reserves one that we've just gone through, so I've got to sign that one. Okay?
Alan said yes, by the way, as he left the room.
Right. Good. Thank you.
I think for a minute our thanks to everyone for all that hard work.
It's a lot of work to do.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, I definitely second.
Excellent.
That's the annual mirror. That's the annual miracle.
Oh, no, I've got another one to come yet.
Oh, dear, too.
And you're in, yes, that's another one.
Right. Okay, so we've agreed to reserves allocations. We've got the memorandum points here about the planning applications. We supported Smitings and Kingsgate House. I mentioned that simply because as they went on circulation you wouldn't necessarily know that. The Gothic House railings were granted, George, and Bud's Cottage was granted, much to our annoyance. The path extension from the beer house to the school playing field, they've asked for it to be rehashed.
Well, what they've asked for,
information.
they've asked for further information. They want to know what the path is made of, which they never did before. We're just doing extension of what they did before. But they've got asked for, you know, depth, what it's made of, etc.
Is this around the playing field side?
It's round in this. It's going to go from the beer house straight down beside the sort of boundary with the house to come out into the playing field.
Oh, right.
So the children don't have to walk around the road to get to the
However, Judy is now asking for steps rather than a ramp. Do you remember we went for a ramp?
Yeah.
But she's asking for steps because a ramp would then go into the field and it would be proud, so it would become a tripping hazard, so it wouldn't be quite that safe.
Yeah.
And that if you've got a disabled child in a wheelchair, which is the only reason it wouldn't be used, they would have to have an adult with them anyway, so it could then safely go around the road.
Yeah. It'd just be a 1-1. That's what we've sort of looked at.
Yeah.
More.
Okay.
One adult, one child.
So that's what I'm waiting for the school on that one.
Okay. Highways.
Well, the pothole menace is heavy duty, although I have to say, having travelled around other parts of East Kent in the last few weeks, we believe it or not, we're actually not as bad as some areas. I mean, the road to Cranbrook through on the Cranbrook Road is an absolute nightmare, but that's not our parish. I am a bit worried about the big rectangle that's appeared in the main road up here near the shop. It's like sinkholes appearing. Yeah. Anyhow, but I'm sure that's on the radar. Excavation, there's Peening Quarter suffered quite a lot, but I think they're all on the radar. They seem to have been out with the spray can, but I think it might have been a very wet day, so those that rode the water weren't sprayed.
That's the trouble. Yes, guys. I saw the guy. He painted up the one just beyond Mill House.
Yeah.
And the following day it was done.
They do.
So
Yeah,
I
they've
thought
done
we
some
must-
really quickly.
Yes.
Where it's reported and painted, the system seems to work pretty well, doesn't it? I think it's sort of we just have to keep spotting them and reporting them. There's the online facility. It's easy to work.
The only issue I have with it is that before you could report it to the steward and you could report it again and somebody else could report it. So we got all these ones coming in. Now you just, once it's been reported, you've only got that one. Whereas we could, before, I mean, I had, on occasions, I've gone straight to him and said, look, this isn't happening. But before, lots of people could get at them. Now it's just, once it's been reported, that's all that stands there. It says, is this the one? Yes.
Something on the TV the other day about someone crashing into a pothole and they couldn't do anything because the council had it reported and had said they would fix it. And that's legally all they have to do. They don't have to fix it, just say they will fix it.
They've got 28 days, I know, or they've decided they've got 28 days. But some of them have just decided that that's our policy and you'll have to lump it.
And also the cyclist, that's one of the biggest hazards, because that really can cause motorbikes. But and if your vehicle does get damaged, then you can claim against the council. They're increasingly have to show.
Some of them are refusing to pay.
What, KCC?
No, it was others. I think it was in the newspaper. I think, or it could have been on television, that some of them are just being obstinate and saying, no, we're not going to pay. We haven't got the money. Go away. You're just taking a tough line. And of course, saying,
well, KCC's answer will be, we don't know if we haven't got the money because they're not quite there yet. So, but that's all I think on the highways.
Quite a big question this, and I don't take up too much time on it, but as we're talking about potholes and cause damage to the roads, does anyone take any notice anymore of the size of the vehicles actually going down these little roads? I mean, Acton Lane, where I live, there's supposed to be a width restriction.
Yeah.
And today I was out and there was literally a Pantethlicon went up and down that lane 6 times.
Did it have a low? Was it a low loader? With a
getting technical.
Well, did it have a vehicle on its back?
It had. Well, it was a
digger.
No, it was it was Voss. It was a big storage.
It was lost.
Oh, you mean it's a delivery?
I don't know what it was doing. It was going up and down, up and down. It didn't look lost. It looked as if it was going probably to Pipers or something.
What is the width restriction on Acton Lane?
No, I'd have to have a look.
At the last, I didn't come in at the beginning of this conversation, but at the last harvest, when there were tractors going up and down your lane, my wife was driving down there and was driven into the ditch.
Well, that happens as well.
She turned around, chased him, flagged him down, and told him exactly what she thought of his driving.
You can still, he's still in chains. His skeleton is still
and that's one way of dealing with
it. There's our memorial in around.
I think we should swear Wilbur in as a high sheriff.
I think my reputation precedes me there.
And it made her late for an appointment, but she said it was worth it.
I think the trouble is they're contract drivers, a lot of them, aren't they?
Well,
so
they are.
They don't know the area, they just hammer along.
But there's no.
Well, if you check
it just
what
seems to be
width
ignored
it is,
now.
And then, I mean, things like a curtain-sided lorry, I don't know how wide they are now, but they are typically, I mean, a container lorry, for instance, if you think of them, they're 8 foot, because the container is 8 foot wide.
Right.
So, if it's a 7'6" restriction, you shouldn't have anything container width or probably curtain-sided width going down there, except that it may be width restriction except for
access.
And access.
If the road has a width restriction on it, does a sign go up saying that?
There used to be a sign, but I
can't remember a sign down there. Maybe it's just fallen over and knocked over.
I think it's gone. It's gone.
Well, I think it's worth investigating. If we have got roads around here that are with restrictions, then if there should be signage up there, and if the lorry does ignore it, then at least you can say we've ignored the sign. Because there'll always be people. I mean, it's a bit like lorry drivers who go under bridges where it says low bridge in the height, and the next thing is you see a double-decker bus caught underneath it or something like that.
Well, it's like Gowthurst, isn't it? People going around there.
Well, they put these massive, great bell bollards there. Which if you ever go into one of those, you'll.
No,
I
our
used to be
sister is nearly
amused when
squeezed
I,
against the wall.
long time ago, just a very brief story, a long time ago in a previous job, I used to go up and down the A1 a lot to Northumberland, and around Kimbolton on the A1, which is off to the west, used to be a big sign, no car transporters allowed through Kimbolton, and I used to see this sign, no car transporters allowed through Kimbolton. And one time, for some reason, I drove through Kimbolton. What I found was that there's a complete sharp right-hand turn and a little cottage right in front. And on the first floor are loads of holes in the wall because the car transporter, when it runs over the cab turns round and the front end crashes into the cottage. So that was a sign that they really did have to take account of.
And they just had enough cars in their bedroom, they didn't need any more.
Yes. Okay. So
can I mention a couple of things in Highway? The chevron, as you go out of Wittersham on the sharp,
that's
drop
always,
one side.
Yes, that's always a problem. I've softened
That's
out
all right
there
to
doing
leave.
it. Yeah, I'll mention it to our friend.
I mean, it's still there, but
yes.
And the water at Peeling Water.
Oh, on the way down the hill.
No, it's not. It's coming from the nurseries.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
But I've heard a story about that from Tony Bullock.
Right.
He tells me he's been on the phone to the water people. And the water people have told him they keep coming out and the leak is in the lady's land. But she's refusing to allow the water people onto her land to do it. So they just go away.
Well, they have been out a lot, actually. They have dug the road up on a couple of
Yeah, but it's not the same place as the leak.
Yeah.
No.
That's at the old greenhouses, presumably.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would have thought
She's
they
told
had
them
rights.
They're right, yeah.
She's told them she will sue them if they
Is
go
there
on her
water
land.
that's leaking? I would have thought. I mean, they'd
But
turn
can
off,
they
wouldn't
not
they?
enforce it? Because
Yes, they
it's
can.
ludicrous.
If
And it's a
their-
waste
if
of
it's-
water
yes, they
as
can.
well,
If
isn't it?
If it's their water, they believe that it's their network of water piping, etc., that's causing the problem. They have, with the
Must have some
appropriate
legal authority,
written
mustn't
advance, it's no different to the power, the UK power, right, just saying they're going to cut us off today, because
But it's also damaging all that
Well, it's
road
damaging
anyway. I'm
everything,
sure
yeah.
there's potholes
There's a
under
big
it.
pothole in the middle of that
Yes.
puddle.
Yeah.
They ought to be up for that, really.
We all
If they
drive
get
the
that
other
together.
side of the road.
I
We'll
think
know
they're-
to
I
do
think
that
they're- I think
now.
they're too timid. I think they need
It
to.
could be.
Which is the property he's refusing them? Who's?
The old greenhouses.
Waypost nurseries.
It's Linda Pelly who lives there.
Yes.
I mean, I've always found her a really sensible, polite lady.
Yeah.
So I'm
I
surprised.
just got back from Tony Bullock. so I
I'm
don't know.
surprised if she does.
I'm trying to work out which is the old, which is the house
That's where the water's coming in.
Yeah, but
You can't see it.
You can't see it.
You can't see
No,
it.
you can't see it from the road.
It's
Right
all those
Right
old
there.
greenhouses there. There are lots
You
of
can't
old
see it,
greenhouses.
Yes, it's called Waypost Nurseries.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, there's also water where we had the repair done near the antique shop a bit ago. That's coming, I'm told, from further up that road now.
That's what I just said
Toll
when it
house.
came to. That was Trevor Brown's comment about the house. The water's coming off the field there.
Yeah.
It's off the field, isn't it?
Yeah, like it comes off the
I
field.
think it is.
Underhill's the same.
Yeah.
Comes off the field there.
It's not a
End
spring
up being
coming
on
out
the
through the
footpath.
road this time.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Mm.
Right. Okay. Public rights of way.
Very muddy.
Indeed they are.
Indeed.
Open spaces.
Muddy. Cemetery churchyard, muddy.
Cemetery and churchyard.
Muddy.
Too much mud.
Yvonne's going to go and research the cemetery tomorrow to see if it's dry enough to get the tree fell.
Probably save
It's
you
not.
the trip.
It's
very, very
I was there
soft.
this afternoon, there's standing water.
It's
Still.
worse. It's worse than it was
Standing
last week.
water.
Okay.
It is worse. It's the worst I've ever seen it
Yeah.
today.
Okay.
It's
So
And
that'll
it's
save
just
you
been
trip.
pouring with rain all the time we've sat in there.
It's going to be another 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Next planning meeting to be advised. Annual parish meeting is on the 19th of April, and I was saying to George when he came in that Yvonne has done my bullet points from which to assemble what we've got to say, and it is a very long list of what we've done in the last year. Good work by Yvonne.
Are we selling ice creams in the interval?
Hope so.
How many people are we expecting?
4.
Well, we filled this room last time with
I'm
nice
afraid
tables
I
and
have to upset
cloths.
myself.
I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I'll have to absent
You're not here.
myself.
It's a Thursday.
It's Thursday night, isn't it?
No.
It's not compulsory.
Having something done on my leg the day before, and I don't think I'll be very mobile. I didn't realise.
We could send the village sedan chair for you. That'd be helpful.
The beer.
Good,
the beer.
do that.
The beer in the beer house.
I'll call your bluff.
It's a very serviceable beer in the beer house. What time is it? Just
7:30 usual.
7:30.
And on that point, and this might seem slightly disingenuous, but are we? Is there anything we should be anticipating? As in
Jeremy's speech.
Well,
Well,
there probably is, isn't there?
Maybe I'm using the wrong word, George, when I'm talking about anticipation.
Oh, right.
I'm just wondering whether there's any contentious issues that are going to come up.
Well, only what you were asking earlier, that people wanted to come along to ask questions.
Yeah.
So is that?
I guess what I was saying is, there anything
is there anything
that we don't know them, but there are going to be people who
do know.
Who do know what they're going to be, and they're going to bring them.
Well, it's going to be housing, isn't it?
It's that elephant in the room over there.
I think so. And I mean, unfortunately,
something to do.
And is Mick's not going to be there.
But Mike Hill will.
But Mike Hill will be.
So he'll do an input.
So we'll be able to sort of get him to.
And we will have a glass of wine, obviously. Yeah.
Oh, everybody.
Several.
Could you make the point that those who stay for all the speeches get a glass of wine?
I thought you got that first.
You need it before.
How long do we think it will last?
8 o'clock.
How long is a piece of string?
What, the wine or the...
It's up to Jeremy, really, isn't it?
1 bottle, 12
It
straws.
depends on what people bring up. I should think including a sort of wind
I'm
down.
sure the
at
Last
end,
Supper was
probably
quite
an hour,
like
an
that.
hour,
That's very
Three-quarters, usually we can manage it.
You'll get a calc of water, I think, if you couldn't get it over in that time. So
We did. Are we going to
We
be
have got
here
a
or
guest.
are we going to be next door?
No, it's here.
No, in here.
I
Can
don't
I just-
expect that.
We did it in here last year
Yeah, it
with
was.
people
Yes, it
with
did.
tables.
Yeah.
And Miriam and Mary sat over in the corner and were...
And I sat with
I
them.
did a talk one year. I
Yeah.
can't remember if that was last year.
Last year.
I'm volunteering.
I
Remember?
joined.
Whoa.
You're a
Yes.
star.
That's
You're a
memorable.
hero, actually.
And all those people
I got to
volunteered
look at
for
the
you,
rules.
didn't they?
Still waiting
Okay.
for the wine.
Can I just, on that
George.
point, you'd said you hadn't had a reply for the guest speaker. Are we going to have not have
Oh,
a
no,
guest speaker then, or
no.
we're not having one? Okay.
No,
Just
you're
basic.
sufficient, George.
That'll save some time.
Don't do
I will.
volunteering again.
I will put it on Facebook and next door and
No, don't worry.
website.
Oh right, I see. Oh, advertising the meeting, you mean, not advertising the speaker.
Oh no, just people will, and the noticeables of course. And you will look that we have to give 7 days notice, so this week
We forget.
you'll get the agenda.
Okay, items for information. Community transport. I went to another meeting, if you remember the one when I was away in, no, I was at the osteopath, I think, the one I missed in February or whenever. No one else was able to go to. I don't know that we missed very much there, but I did go to another meeting on the 14th of March. Sorry, I didn't change, 4th of April. I did not change the heading. 14th of March is the one I missed. I was going to Spain. 4th of April I went to in the morning. We did get a little bit of a happy surprise. 7 residents of Wittersham were reported as having filled in questionnaires. We didn't get any uptake of questionnaires, as far as I know, from alerting Judy and Pat to see if anyone wanted to fill them in. Yvonne didn't get asked for any hard copies, but they were supposed to be accosting residents in the High Street in Tenterden, and I presume 7 of them would come from Wittersham. So there were 7. Somewhere or other, I can give you a context for that. They got 37 from Tenterden, 14 from St Michael's, 11 from Rolvenden, 7 from High Holden, 7 from Wittersham, 2 from Headcorn, 3 from Smarden, 3 from Stone, 5 from Woodchurch, 1 from Staplehurst, 1 from Basildon, 2, that's it. So we didn't come out too badly with 7. Having said that, I did see a report on what people said about this, that and the other, and to be honest. I mean, it was apparently a KCC questionnaire. I didn't think it fitted into any obvious patterns really, or told them very much. But Kent wanted to have a questionnaire before they consider giving a grant, so they've done a questionnaire. They've made their applications for the funding by the Tenterden Social Hub to KCC. They want to create a new subsidiary company, and the newest bus they've got, which they were given by the Department of Transport the other year, they're going to put that into the company as their match funding. So if they get away with that, that's quite smart. What will come out of it, we wait to see. But there is the possibility of it being helpful. Meanwhile, the Johnson's bus finished, as I think I reported last time. The other thing that's really interesting on this, it just came up by chance. I reported before that the Ashford Volunteer Bureau provides volunteer drivers at a cost to take people to hospital and doctors and things like that. And it's 50p a mile plus £3, I think. 50p a mile, but you have to pay the volunteer driver from their house to their house. So if it was a volunteer from Ashford, it starts getting jolly expensive. But they have got 3 volunteer drivers in Tenterden, so that is actually at least a bit better. It's 5 miles from Tenterden to here rather than 12 miles from Ashford to start you off and finish up. Obviously it would help if we had volunteer drivers in Wittersham, and they're not averse to any of that. But at least the fact that we know there are 3 in Wittersham, in Tenterden as a
what do they charge, you say, 50p?
50p a mile.
That's about £20 then, from Tenterden to here to William Harvey and back here to somewhere in Tenterden, about 20.
The one thing that's worth, by the way, they did mention, they did complain that Kent Social Services tend to sign them up with patients with dementia, and they can't cope with it. The volunteer drivers are not trained to cope with people who are potentially violent and all the rest of it.
Well, they can't be in the back of the car dealing with them.
No, did. Exactly right, George. So that was that session on community transport. Any queries? No? The calc meeting I went to the night before I went to Spain. I think you've had the minutes. The only things worth picking out were, I mentioned to George earlier, most of the councils there have been on the same seminar that you two went to for GDPR, and they were generally pretty scathing of the consultants. I think you were actually as well, of the course. They were refusing to sign up with them generally. I said that we had, and I think they were mostly a bit askance, but they're hoping that ABC's consultant, which is a different one, will be better. And to be honest, and Michelle Byrne was commissioned to go away and find out if they could put something together. My feeling was, whichever consultant you get, the underlying problems aren't going to change. No one knows what the rules are. They're all OTT. They don't apply very well.
KCC are pushing Setswana for schools as well.
I know.
I think it's fairly okay.
There was a letter from, I think, or just a report maybe, that NALC had been on to the minister. I think they wrote to the minister saying that they were lobbying really to say that it was all OTT for parish councils, and they just got a basic letter back from the typical civil servant on behalf of, the minister signed it, saying, data protection and privacy are all terribly important for parish councils as well. Well, no one disagrees with that. The question is, how much worry of data protection and privacy is there in parish councils? None.
One of the things that I'm actively involved in delivering GDPR audits at the moment, right, at a price. I'm not going to do it here because it would be a conflict of interest with the consultants. Well, yeah, I mean, we were doing mostly charities. I've got one in Bradford, I'm going to Liverpool, and we're talking to KCC, Kent County Cricket Club, not the council, doing a lot of work there. And you're absolutely right, no one really knows. The only thing is Elizabeth, I can't remember her name now, the Information Commissioner was on the early morning news.
No, that's the parliamentary one.
No, Elizabeth, somebody. Anyhow, she was on the early morning news yesterday. It's very clear that they are going to come out of the blocks absolutely screaming on the 25th of May. I don't think Wittersham Parish Council is going to be the primary target. They'll go after some really big people because for two reasons. They need to make a statement, and they build an organisation that's cost a fortune, so they've got to get some money from somewhere. If I was going to summarise what we go in and we do audits on current procedures and practices and so on and so forth of organisations, and then make a series of recommendations. If I was going to summarise that, right, without interfering with what you're doing, I would just say that for me, the fact we're doing something and we're following away and what have you counts for a lot with the ICO. The second thing is to have one of the things that we do is we look at organisations' websites, and they range from so far out of date, because the Data Protection Act was 1998, back in the late 90s, and they still quote that. The biggest threat are going to be any charities that have dealings with children. We don't. That's actually a blessing for us. And I just think if we have right on the front page, we have either a privacy statement or a link to it.
Our website's already got a privacy statement.
And that's a real big tick in the box. Yeah. And the rest of it, we'll just, we just make sure that, and in fact, there's a real misunderstanding about, we're not moving into an environment where you can't have data on people. We just have to make sure that the data we gather is fit for purpose and there's a reason behind it, etc. Now, as a parish council, we do that. And I think that, we're in good hands with you, Yvonne and George, in that respect.
If I tell you where we are with that at the moment, if you don't mind, just as an update, I know it's not on the agenda actually, that we've completed the impact assessment. It's been sent to Satswana, and who just said great work and sent it back. So I've just got back to them and said, well, great work, what does that mean? What do we need to do next? Is this okay as it is? Or do we need to do something as well as? So I'm waiting on a response from that as over the last couple of days. As I said, I've been on the website. We have got an appropriate privacy statement on the website. We haven't got to worry about that. I've got hold of a privacy statement pro forma from Satswana for our general other than website information, and also retention policy. So it shows the period of time we have to retain things, which might be in conflict with some other things that we've discussed previously, but we'll need to come back to that. So as far as I'm concerned, all we need to do at the moment is formalise an action plan about what we need to do to get from where we are now to something a little bit better, because what we do now is fine. There's no issue with it, and that's all we've got to do really.
A consent form. We're going to have to produce a
new consent form.
I think we're in good shape. Yeah, we're said there.
And as you say, the general feeling is, because we've done all this, we're not ignoring it. We're actually progressing, and there is a point at which we will be totally there.
All right, good. Thank you, George. The new head of planning, as I mentioned earlier, Tim Naylor, came to the CALT meeting and gave us a presentation, a chat really. It's in the minutes, I think, whatever he said. Simon Cole came with him. They discussed the plan for 2030, and I said that we'd decided at the previous meeting not to reply to Simon's reply to us, which got a bit of a titter. I said we didn't bother to, which is basically because he didn't say anything. Ashford Civic Awards are being run again, closing date of 21st of May. So if we want to think about that, and any names would have to go into closed session. But
I put posters on the notice board.
Okay. And
what was the award that we talked about a few months ago?
Cal. I asked the same question.
Ashford is the one that went to Alan Wood.
Alan Wood, 6 years ago. It's not annual thing.
Presumably Jennifer got that, did she?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. That's I got mixed up with that too.
And the CALC Ashford branch letter to the minister, complaining about the planning and the housing and all the rest of it. That got sent and it was replied to without saying anything much.
Yeah.
They're seeking a meeting, which of course they're told is too busy for. Situation normal. So that was CALC meeting. Does anyone have any other items of information?
Just a reminder, folks, please let me know in advance when you're going away. Well, yes, I was, George. To tell me on Thursday you're going away, I need to know a week in advance, because when stuff's going around...
If I tell you the reason,
he might
someone in our family was given 2 weeks to live on that day.
No, but this is the problem.
I couldn't do it 2 weeks before, sorry.
How long? How long do I have to be away before I have to tell you? I mean, obviously not a day, but
No, if you're away for a weekend, then that's okay. But if you're away for more than sort of 4
I'm
days...
away for 2 days in the middle of the week.
No, that's okay, because if it gets left on your...
3 days?
Tonbridge, we should put the bucket out on the street.
What should
and then we'd all know.
You know, when are you in
More
residency?
than 3 days. More than 3 days.
It's just that if the planning application's going around
I know,
and
I
it
know.
sits on...
But
And you're the second person...
Yes, fortunately there weren't any on my doorstep when I got back.
No.
I put them all in Leslie's box.
Yes, and I was away over Easter.
I got them when I came back.
I was fine with letterbox.
I've been a good boy.
Done that on purpose.
I thought you might have done.
I used to have a nice
It's
big
moved.
one on the front door.
Yes, we're supposed to let the bond know if we go away for 3
Well, it
days.
might be easier for me to say when I'm here, because I'm always away.
This is true.
But it does affect planning applications.
Yeah,
That's the key.
You see,
to it, really.
Colin let me know, and so when I gave something to Jeremy, I said, please let Colin have it first.
Oh, that's
So he had it
yeah.
first, and then I knew that.
That's what it's all
a little red
about.
flag on your letterbox, like the
No, I
Americans
mean,
have.
yes, well, I could just put it on the top of
It
the
doesn't
other.
matter generally if you're away
That's rude.
in the sense that
You're not here.
apologies if you don't come to a meeting, obviously, and you can be wherever you like, and you're on the email anyway if emails are going around, except as Yvonne
Yes,
said,
Have you decided what's happening now?
then it's a nuisance.
We're going.
I think we're holding Alan up. Yeah.
Alan,
I've got some jobs to do.
Okay, can we finish with the meeting then?
yeah, officially, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Is it switch off now?
No, it's not until I press the